Hey, what's up everybody, Nexel here. Today we are playing Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, and I will be completing in this video round 6 through 10 for the tier 3 or below challenge. For numbers 1 through 5, you could pretty much go in with almost any setup and be able to take out all the enemies. Just make sure you follow the general principles from the tips that I gave in the last video, as well as, general tips for Keyblade setups where you put the general attack buffs at the beginning. That way all the downstream ones get the power up, things like that. Round 6 is where things start to get a little bit tricky, so that's why we're going to go over round 6 through 10, which are arguably the difficult quests of this entire challenge here. So let's go ahead and jump into quest number 6. The thing you need to know for quest number 6 is that you should probably have something with Dispel prepped on it. So this is the setup I'm going to be using, and that's because the last enemy, the target enemy, has a Barrier Master in it, and once you tap a Barrier Master pretty much with any hit that decreases a countdown timer, it will pretty much increase the defense of everything that is part of that enemy group. So let's go ahead and skip all these guys because there's no point in us fighting them. There isn't an objective where we have to fight all the enemies or defeat them all in one turn or anything like that. So we just run straight to the final part where we find our Barrier Master and our Wyvern. Now, the minute you tap that Barrier Master, it is going to cast defense on everything. So the Wyvern and the Barrier Master will both get the defense plus. What we're going to do to deal with that is we're going to cast Bell, which casts a spell on everything, and then we're just going to proceed to punch the guys until we defeat all of them. So that's that. Just make sure that in general, if you don't have a Bell, or if you have like an Alice and an Anti-Form Sora or something like that, make sure that you defeat the Wyvern first, because if you defeat the Barrier Master first, it's going to cast extra defense on the Wyvern, which kind of doesn't matter if you use 2 turns, because then you just use the 2 turns and dispel each of the enemies individually. But I would definitely go after the Wyvern first given the choice. So that's what makes number 6 tricky, is just that Barrier Master. Number 7, quest number 7, kind of has a similar concept to it, where you need a Dispel, because the huge snowman will have automatically +3 defense on it, and then with almost every turn it's able to increase its defense buff. So let's go ahead, skip all the enemies. Again, there's 0 benefit to us fighting them, and let's head straight to our huge snowman. So we're going to have the Pongo and Perdita. Again, those are to restore gauges, which I should have said in the last video. Things might be a little sketchy just because I was actually recording this video and then my computer froze and restarted itself, so I'm not really sure what I said in between the two. But yeah, going back to the challenge at hand, I don't know if you guys saw, there was that +3 defense that the boss had when we started off, +3 PSM defense, so we used the Bell to dispel that one. So as you can see, after its turn, it gives itself +2 PSM defense buffs, and if you don't take care of it within the first round when you had the +3, it'll actually add on +2, so it'll be +5 now, and that can get super annoying. So it's important to have the Dispel in there in order to continually take out those defense buffs. And since it is only a single target enemy and we don't have to worry about things like we did for the Barrier Master, you can definitely feel free to pretty much only use like an Alice or an Anti-Form Sora, which will remove single target buffs. So we're going to keep going along here and just keep taking out this enemy. This is kind of not an optimal setup, but I mean, the less optimal the setup, the more it'll apply to the general public. So hopefully this kind of gave you some ideas about like what the minimum requirements are in order to defeat these quests. Alright, so as you can see, we still stuck under the 120-second mark, so we're still good. We're still going to get the jewels from this quest. Defense, the Dispel was just important because you can take a lot of extra time fighting that boss. You can literally go on forever, pretty much. Well, not literally go on forever, but it can take a lot of extra time, and then you won't be able to defeat it within that 120 seconds. You won't get the jewels, and that's the important part of the objectives. Alright, so for stage number 8, This one isn't too hard, but the main thing behind it is that you need to have a lot of medals that have a lot of punch. So I have my Lucifer here. It has extra attack. That's going to give me +4 general strength. I have an Axel B that has extra attack. That's going to give me +6 power strength. And then everything else after that, the 101 Dalmatians is to restore gauges. The Hercules and Phil and the Sykes B and the Miyaji are strictly damaging purposes. So let's go ahead and just go through this quest here. Luckily, this quest is the typical Coliseum quest where you have to fight the enemies. There's no way around them, but you get an SP chest at the end of each one. So that's kind of helpful if you don't have an SP restoring medal, but having the SP restoring medal definitely makes things a lot easier. So there's our chest. It's a big chest. We are going to go in. This is our second round here. And I know that another thing that makes my setups not optimal is that I'm using like the dinky keyblades like Treasure Trove and 3 Wishes and stuff like that, when you realistically can use any keyblade. Like, you're not restricted to using the low tier keyblades. You can definitely go in with like a Fairy Stars for every single one, and then just take anything out with pretty much that 3.3 multiplier that everyone always guns for on Fairy Stars. So that's a good thing, is that you're not Keyblade restricted, so you're allowed to use pretty much whatever powerful setups you want, as long as the abilities you want to use are on tier 3 or lower medals. So that's just really good, and should make these honestly a little bit easier. I only used the Treasure Trove and the 3 Wishes strictly because I didn't want to like de-build some of my setups, so that's why I used them, because they had open slots. Now, as you can see, going back to the challenge, I'm pretty much just punching this guy with all my heavy hitter medals after I sufficiently buffed myself. The main thing you want to keep in mind here is that you have to complete this one, I believe, in less than 100 seconds. This is one of the ones we have to do it in less than 100 seconds. Yeah, and that gets kind of difficult because even with that super powerful setup, I still only cleared it in about 83 seconds. So keep that in mind. Again, you can use a higher level Keyblade than the Treasure Trove. You can go in with like a Fenrir or a Fairy Stars or what have you. But just keep in mind, yeah, 100 seconds, that's the cutoff. And I did use a super powerful setup there, and it still just barely cut me the right amount. Alright, now this is probably the worst one, the most annoying one, but it's a solid challenge. It kind of tests your knowledge of the map, just like the other challenge, the super long one, the 2nd anniversary one where we're running around. It kind of tests that ability, but it's not nearly as bad as the 2nd anniversary running around quest. Okay, so we're gonna do this stage twice, because this is one of the ones where you have to defeat all the enemies, because there's only a total of 19 enemies in there, and then you have to complete it in 120 seconds. I don't think it's possible to do both of those at the same time, so you just go into this quest 2 times, go in one run specifically to take out the 19 enemies, and then do a second run to complete it within 120 seconds. So we'll go ahead and do the defeating all the enemies one first. So on the main path, there should be 4 enemy groups. The first one is going to be this bad dogs group. Bad dogs? Mad dogs? I believe they're bad dogs. So that is going to be the first enemy group, and that is going to bring up our total enemy counter to 4. So after this, we've taken out 4 of the enemy groups. Let's just tap along here, because that's pretty much all we need. Okay. So the next set of enemies we're going to fight is this Dark Ball set, and this is going to add up 4 more enemies, so we are bringing it up to a total of 8 total enemies as of right now. So again, we're just going to use up the time, because this is going to be our run that we don't care about time. We just want to defeat the enemies to complete that last objective. If you want, you could technically skip the last objective for all of these, because all they give you is like an experience medal, and that's not too much of a big deal. But if you're a complete objective hunt finisher, then this is the right way to go about it. Alright, so the third enemy group on this path is going to be this hidden group of search ghosts. So just keep in mind that there is a hidden enemy group here. If you can't find it because you're like cutting the corner really quickly, just know that it is hiding there. Alright, so we are going to just take out these search ghosts like normal. And then after these guys, we have one more enemy group on the main path. So right now we're at 11 total defeated enemies. Let's go down here. The last one on the main path is going to be this dual copter fleet that we have to take out. And I've always hated these enemies just because whenever I fight them, they like slow down my whole game. Like, I don't know why it slows it down so much. Maybe it's because there's just so many moving parts on the screen or something like that, but it's kind of annoying. But yeah, just a little spiel at why I don't like fighting the copters, just because they slow my game down so much. Alright, so we are going to take these guys out with our Hercules and Phil here. This should be enough. Okay, cool. So that's all the enemies on the main path. There are 2 secret paths on this route. So the first secret path is going to be, this is our beginning right here. We are going to go down right here. This is the first secret path. And there is a paralysis archer and then a few other archers in here. So I'm not too particularly worried about the whatchamacallit, the status ailments, that's what they're called. I'm not too worried about them, just because you at least get 1 Asuna from your pet, and then they're not even like the bad status ailments for time challenges. The bad one would be sleep, because when it knocks you out, like, that could be a problem when it comes to dealing damage. Alright, so here is the second secret pathway, so let's head back. This is the beginning right here. This is where we started. Then we're going to go down, and then up right here. So up here is an invisible, and it's just 1 enemy, but again, it's important to take out all the enemies to finish that last objective, just because there are only 19 enemies in this entire stage. Also, I just noticed this now. It's super funny that I was actually behind this little rock structure thing, but like I'm clipping the frames by somehow having my animations appear in front of it, so that's kind of funny. Alright, so that should bring us up to a total of 17 enemies, with the last 2 enemies being in this second part of the map. The first one is going to be this new enemy, not new to Kingdom Hearts, but new to Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, is this fortune teller. And the main thing you got to worry about with the fortune teller is that after you hit it once, it will debuff you. So it will lower your strength down by 3, and I believe also lower your PSM strength down by 3. So make sure you have like Asuna to heal yourself up, or dispel yourself, something along those lines. Or like even Chain of Memories Nominee will copy the buffs of the enemy. So that is one way to go about it. Those are just a few ways I could think of off the top of my head. Moving on to the last part of this mission, and it is going to be quite a doozy. Now, this is one of the reasons why I think this quest is sort of where it separates like players that have solid tier 3 setups and ones that don't, is just because this thing has a solid amount of health. It has a countdown timer, and unless you've got like defense boost 4 or something proccing, I'm pretty sure it has enough strength to actually just take you out normally. Luckily, I don't have to worry about that, because I can just literally just run through it. So hopefully this isn't too hard for people, but just know that this is definitely, in my opinion, the turning point for these quests when they start to get difficult, because if you guys haven't noticed my setup, especially newer players, these are all medals that were technically offered for free, with the exception of the Lucifer, which had to be from polls. But the Axel B, the Cyx B, the 101 Dalmatians, the Meowjesty, and the Hercules and Phil, all of those were free medals at a certain point. So the longer you've been playing, obviously the better your selection is, and that's why I think that that's really like the turning point for these quests, is because they're really easy if you have the right medals, for sure, and all of these were offered for free at some point. So that's a big thing. If you guys want me to try different setups, that's fine, just let me know. Like restrict without the Axel B with extra attack, or without the Lucifer, things like that. Let me know if you guys want me to test that. This is really just to give you guys a show of like a guide where enemies are, how to make things quick, things like that. Alright, so for completing the objective, complete within 120 seconds, pretty much what you do is right from the get-go, just jump down the secret path here, and then that saves you a lot of extra time. You do still have to take out this foreteller, because I've been saying foreteller, haven't I? I mean fortune teller. You have to take out the fortune teller just because it is just in the way of getting to the target boss. So unfortunately, you can't bypass this fortune teller, but it shouldn't be too hard. The main thing that would make this difficult is trying to keep it underneath the 120 seconds, just because not only do you have to take out this enemy, but you also have to take out the assault dragon itself. So defeating the fortune teller, I'm already at 40 seconds, meaning I only have 80 seconds to take out this assault dragon. So just keep that in mind that you are on a time crunch. That is the biggest part about these missions, because the time requirement, the time objective, is going to be what nets you jewels. So we are going to keep just trucking along, taking out this enemy with pretty much our heaviest hitting red setup that is on our treasure trove, not even our Fenrir. So for, you know, the players that haven't been around too long that only have treasure trove and not Fenrir, because that Fenrir is a proud mode keyblade. Here's like hopefully some advice for you that will help you get through these quests. Because that's really all, again, I keep saying this in all my videos, that's really all like YouTube is for the most part, is a place to go watch fun videos or a place to like get advice. And this is hopefully falling under the advice category. Alright, so we defeated it with this powerful setup but a weak keyblade. We defeated it within that 120 seconds, clocking out at about 90 seconds. So that extra 30 seconds could have been technically like an extra turn I used in order to take out that assault dragon. But that's definitely, again, this is the quest where I definitely think things start to take a turning point, and you have to start really thinking about your setups and using high-level tier 3, does that make sense? High-level tier 3 medals. So that's really where things, I believe, start to turn around. Okay, so the last one isn't too hard. It is just like round 9, where it says you have to take out 5 enemies in order to complete that last objective, and there's only 5 enemies in the entire stage. So just like round 9, you might have to go through this one twice, but that's not a big deal because, again, it's 0 AP campaign, unless you have some sort of like particular thing where you need to get all the objectives in one go. Just do it in 2 and save yourself some stress. Alright, so the first group of enemies is unfortunately going to be 2 of these fortune tellers, which is super annoying because they're both going to debuff you, and that gets kind of tedious because it's going to extend the amount of time, which is why I think it's going to take like roughly 2 times to do this, unless you've got things like a Pluto, which has a Suna on it, which will, you know, rebuff you. Yeah, pretty much it should take 2 turns for pretty much anyone for the most part. So look at this. With all these attack debuffs on me, I'm like barely scratching these guys. So I have to wait until the second turn where I can rebuff myself properly. Alright, so there goes that, and then we get our HP recovery 1. If things take a turn south, I'll probably just use my Nova. I should have like thought this through a little bit more and like brought a Pluto just to be safe. But yeah, we are just going to just keep trucking along here. So we should be doing damage now that we're at least in plus general strength. Okay, cool. So we took out those fortune tellers. The next thing we have is this set of blitz spheres right here. Blitz spears, not blitz spheres. This isn't Final Fantasy X. And again, these are just going to be your standard punch them out enemies. They might be a little bit difficult because they are kind of strong. They do have a lot of health going for them. So just keep that in mind moving forward with these quests. Again, quest 9 is where things realistically started to get difficult. So we are just going to keep going along here, taking these guys out. And I said it in the last video, but you can definitely have medals with like defense boost and second chance that could be useful for you, especially if you're having like a hard time with these. So just keep that in mind. I don't use them on my setups because my setups are currently powerful enough to be able to take these things out without too much problem. If I think it's going to take a turn south, then I'll probably just use that Nova again, like I said earlier with the fortune tellers. So let's see how much damage between my Hercules and my Meowjesty and my Psy-XB. Hopefully that's enough to take everything out. Perfect. Okay, good. Alright, so that's that. We are clearly over the 2-minute mark, so that's why I say, you know, you should just really consider defeating the 5 enemies, getting that last objective, and then going back in and doing the 120-second objective. You don't really have to do the last objective technically, because it's just experience medals, and experience medals are pretty easy to get nowadays, between the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday quests, and between like Union Cross and stuff like that. So if you're not too worried about that, if you don't like seeing a perfect Mickey setup like I do, which is why I do all the trouble of completing all the objectives, then don't worry about it. Save your time. You know, there's really no need to stress over too much about an experience medal. Alright, so that takes out... Oh yeah, pet coming in clutch. Okay, so that takes out the boss. And you're going to want to take out that boss pretty much within 120 seconds in order to get the jewels. Not too much of a big problem with this quest. Some general advice is that you could bring in a defense boost because the boss doesn't hit you for too much. So having a defense boost might buy you extra turns. But again, you want to kind of shrink the amount of turns you use because that is more buffing you have to do, like rebuffing. And then that is just wasted time. And time is the only important factor in these quests because time is what's going to get you the jewels. So here we are, we went through it a second time, we just bypassed all the enemies, because again, once we have that third objective complete, there's no point in us taking those enemies out. Like, we can just run straight to the target enemy and take them out, and put all our time and effort into taking out this last guy. So let's go ahead, just keep crunching along here. This thing's on auto, because when you're on auto, the medals automatically proc the minute that, really the second that the game allows them to. So having things on auto just makes things faster. Alright, Psyx coming in, and then we've got 15 bars left. Let's see if between our Meowjesty and I guess our pet again, we can take this thing out. Ah, no. Okay. See, so I had to take a second turn. The reason that knocked me out is because Lucifer decreases my defense. So normally if you don't do something like that, if you use like a Piglet or something like that, you don't have to worry too much about the damage, especially if like defense boost or something like that. Alright, there we go. We completed it in 75 seconds, which is well below the 120 second mark. So that is it for quests 6 through 10, as well as the general tips that I have for those guys. And that should complete the challenge. Hopefully it wasn't too challenging for anyone with like a solid set of tier 3s or lowers, especially the Pongo Perdita or 101 Dalmatians or Iago. I would say those are pretty essential to getting these missions done in a relatively fast manner. But the first set of medals at Pongo Perdita, 101 Dalmatians, those were free at a point and they weren't exactly hard to obtain. The individual Dalmatians, those were like a mess. That took like forever. But the Pongo and Perdita medals were easy to obtain, so it shouldn't have been too hard to get extra attack on that for anyone who actually gave the time and effort. But yeah, that is my guide for quests or rounds 6 through 10. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to throw them in the comments below and I will try my best to answer. If you have any questions about setup or anything like that, again, just let me know and I'd be happy to help when I have the time to help. So that's it for this video for now. Hopefully some good things are coming in the anniversary later on. We've got like just again like hodgepodge quests like this super challenge power quest, this one, the daily Lux challenge, which looks very poorly edited in my opinion. I don't know if it was like a last second response, but I don't know. So hopefully we've got some better stuff down the line here. They said they've got things for the month of April, and I am counting on it to save the anniversary. Maybe we'll make a separate video on how they could save anniversary, but that's for another time. So for now, that is my guide. Again, questions, comments, or concerns, throw them down below, and I will try my best to answer. As always, everyone, until the next video, take it easy.